Hi, this is Barb Allen with American Snippets. As you know, we find people across this country who have an incredible story and often are the incredible story. We have been lucky to interview all sorts of people who have moved us on different levels. And this is a person I came across recently, and you'll hear her story in a minute, but it really just reached me so deeply. And I took a chance and reached out, and I said, she's never going to have a moment to get back to me. I'll never hear from her. But she did. I'm so honored she is here today. Cori Salchert, I said that right. Okay, good. Is here with us from Wisconsin. She's interviewing us out of her home because her home is where she does her most amazing work. So hello, Cori. Thank you for joining us today.
You bet. Thanks for asking me.
Why don't you tell us, we're going to start a little bit, we'll ease into this. Tell us quickly, because just the, what I'll say, quote, normal stuff, is amazing. Do you have 8 children?
Yes.
So I am a mother of 4. Huh?
Counting, I guess.
Yeah, and counting, right. I mean, 8 children, biological children, yeah. And I have 4, and I don't even know how you do that. Like, you could do that and give yourself a pat on the back and just call yourself Queen of America, and I don't think anybody would disagree. But you went above and beyond that. First, in your personal work, tell us about what you had a job, or you were a perinatal nurse.
Right. Yes. I am a registered nurse and have been for almost 29 years. Graduated in May of 1988. Anyway, we have 8 biological children, and a couple of them are married and another one's almost married. And so we're expanding our family that way. 8 biological children, like I said, and I worked as a nurse for like the first 5 years of our marriage. And then I took about 10 years off to have my kids and raise them. And then went back to work in, I think, 2003. And I had worked in hospice, and I went back to work in OB, thinking, you know what, I'm going to go to the other end of the spectrum, and it'll just be sweetness and light. Because for the most part, that had been my story. I knew some women who had miscarriages or a stillbirth, but it just wasn't, my world hadn't included that very much. I didn't get to work on the maternity floor for very long before I found that it happened a whole lot more often than I had anticipated, that women would come in and not find a heartbeat, or that they would have the baby and the baby would die shortly after birth. And so that hospice background that I had, that makes someone run towards the danger in that kind of situation, stood me in good stead, given that I definitely had patients that they needed that kind of care and concern. A family member had died, and I will fight with anybody who says hospice doesn't apply to babies or to, children in the womb. I'm sorry, a family member has died. Someone has been not lost. These babies are not lost. That term I don't like at all. This family needs care for their grief, and that it's not just, go home and have another one. Like, children are just replaceable, like you lose your shoe. Right. So there was a care and a concern that I could bring to those situations, and I could not change that baby had died or that baby was going to die. What I tried to do was just make it a little less tragic, and that possibly there could be some good memories in there, so that when things were sifted through afterwards, that they had photos, and that they'd had a chance to hold their baby, and that footprints were made, and that baby had been dressed and blanketed and given some dignity and some holdability. So took my work very seriously with that, and got dreadfully sick, started in 2008, totally crashed in 2011, nearly died with, I have a number of autoimmune diseases. They all just went absolutely crazy, and was incredibly sick, and just the recovery from that threw me into, okay, now what? Because I've had surgeries that have gimped my intestinal tract, whatever, so that I'm not able to go back to work. And, I've got all this expertise, I've got all of this compassion. What are you going to do with that now? And my prayer was, God, you're going to have to take this mess and redeem it, because I don't see any good coming out of this at all. And that was when the door opened to doing medical treatment foster care here at home.
Wow. So I mean, I know people who have gone through just a slight bit of something and just haven't been able to get back up. I went through something which I thought, to me was absolutely awful, losing my husband. And I almost didn't get back up from that. I have great respect for what you went through and how you not only pulled yourself back up, but pulled other people with you. It's just, I am so in awe of this. But so let's tell everybody what you decided to do from there. You became a foster parent to a very special baby at that point.
Well, I just want you to know right off the bat here that it isn't really a matter of my pulling myself up by my bootstraps and I'm just going to make the best of a bad situation. I just laid there and, for the longest time while I was sick, it was just like, kill me already. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to be sick and I don't want to be gimped. And I just, I'm done. So I had quit. And my husband said, well, before, we have a funeral, you are going to try one more time. And I went to Santa Fe Medical Institute in Mexico, and they were the ones that kind of discovered, okay, you know what, you've got celiacs, and pretty much everything I was eating because of the leaky gut was causing inflammation. So they just went to great lengths to help me there and got me back on my feet, but not completely. So then I'm sitting here with this body that these surgeries have irreparably damaged. And I have a song by Selah, Selah, which is a contemporary Christian band, and they just said, it may be unfulfilled, it may be unrestored, but anything that's shattered, that's laid before the Lord, just watch and see. It will not be unredeemed. And I said, all right, you know what? I'm taking you to the bank on this one because this is a mess, and I don't know what it is that you could possibly do with this that could redeem any of it, because my job was lost and my health had been lost and my family was just like in survival mode. So we went through the summer of 2012, and I had wanted several years before then to bring a baby home should that family find out that there was a fatal fetal anomaly and they didn't know that they could carry that child, if that child lived after birth, until that child passed away. If that was just more than what they could handle, it's like, oh, Mark, wouldn't this be great? We could do this. And he just looked at me and said, we're both working full time. We homeschool. We have 8 children. I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, we're just not going to bring that kind of a heartache home. We're just not. Okay, so then you fast forward 3 years, and we have been through, quote unquote, worst case scenario. And all of a sudden it's like, you know what? Death was not the worst thing. So when we got a call in August that there was a baby without the right or left hemisphere of her brain, just the brain stem, she did have a skull, so she was not anencephalic. That mom had, dad was not in the picture, that mom just could not do it and had said, I can't, and left her at the hospital. And they called and they said, all right, we knew that this was something that was on your heart before. What do you think about bringing her home? And I said yes right away. And then I wasn't quite sure what my husband was going to say, simply because he had been so hesitant 3 years before. And when I told him that there was this child, that we could bring her home and care for her and that she would be a part of our family until she passed away, he said, let's do it. Let's go for it.
Wow.
What's her name? And I said, well, she doesn't have a name. And he said, well, we're going to change that. This baby is not going to be carried out the back door in a bag and buried, and no one will be crying. So we carried her out the front door. She was chosen and she was cherished, and she has a name, and she was known, and she's missed, and she is still loved. And I drove by it in the cemetery today, and it's like, you know what? Your body may be in that grave, but girlfriend, you are running and dancing and flying free at this point in time, able to do what it is that her little body, as broken as it was never able to do this side of heaven. So her tears have been wiped away. Ours are not yet.
Yeah.
But the worst case scenario that then was not that she was going to die, but that she would die tucked away in a corner in that NICU where she wasn't really even held to be fed. She had a pump that was doing that for her. And I don't know if you remember the Sesame Street song that says one of these things is not like the other, one of these things just doesn't belong. When we walked in there, there's all this flurry of activity with all the other kiddos, and they're all hooked up. She was wrapped in a blanket in a wood crib off to the side. And it was like, okay, Chica, this is not where you belong. We're taking you home. And she lived for 50 amazing days and went to the beach and the bank and the bookmobile and a Winona Judd concert. Have baby, have oxygen tank, will travel. And she lived quite large in the time that she had here. And she died right here in my arms with my heartbeat. And then she drew her last breath and woke up in heaven. And there was no pain and there was no struggling. And she was not alone.
That is it is amazing, and that you choose to focus on life instead of death, and you take it to a literal sense when you say every day matters. You don't just put that on a bumper sticker and drive around in a minivan and say every day matters. You live it, and you make sure that every day, every single day does matter for people, and they're people. They're babies, but they're people who don't have many days. And you're a good reminder that every life deserves a life. Tell us about who is in your family now.
Okay, so we started with medical treatment foster care, that licensing process, when Emilin came along. Emilin is her name, and started with medical treatment foster care. We had another foster child in between who was had some medical issues, and we resolved those very quickly and took care of him for about 8 months. And then his adoptive family has him, and he is just thriving and doing wonderfully. I took him to his adoptive family. My birthday just seems to be the time, and maybe it's just, I think it's a gift from God because it helps me to remember. Emilin died on the 27th. We were planning her funeral on September 28th, my birthday. And so then I'm not scrambling around going, okay, what day did she die? Because those things are important to me, to remember those dates and not be at a loss. So then we had J-Babes, the next one, and he ended up being with us. And then on my birthday weekend in 2014, I went to and gave him to his family. And, definitely a huge loss. But my prayer in doing that was that he would see me smiling when I left, that it wasn't going to be my face was all a mess and, everything was all upset. And, God just totally answered prayers that way. And actually, not just for him to see me smiling, but I saw him and he looked at me, and, the transition was made, and I kind of shifted into aunt status, and his mom took over and he was good with her. And his last thing with me was smiling. It's like, I know you, and I love you and whatever. And we left him at 10 months old with his family. We only had about 3 weeks. And my husband said, you need to get back in the saddle. And I said, no. I said, you know what? I need some time to regroup here. I mean, my heart's aching and I miss this kiddo. And he said, yeah, but this is what you do. So, let's do it. And I mean, for my husband to say that and not say, you know what, we're never doing this again. I don't want you crying. I don't want this kind of heartache. The man really is amazing in the fact that he realizes that tears are not worst case scenario. My being upset is not worst case scenario. My grieving is not worst case scenario. So, we're going to, the broken heart is worth it. And so I called her, I asked the kids, I said, you know what, we don't have to do this again. I know that, we're all missing J-Babies and whatever. And my daughter, Mary Elizabeth, said, Mom, what if, there's some kid that needs us and you're sitting over here with a broken heart? Okay, well, fine. So I called the social worker, and she called me back a week later and said, all right, we have a little guy in the hospital right now. He's 4 months old, and he has a trach. And what do you think? And I said, well, okay, that's fine. We can do that. And we had talked about it. And I walked in with a couple of my daughters and met Charlie for the first time in October of 2014. And he was arched in his crib, and his eyes were rolled back in his head. It was not, oh my goodness, this kiddo is so cute, I'm just absolutely in love. It was a very sobering realization, and I said, he is significantly brain damaged. And the nurse said, yes, he is. And I said, all right, I want to hold him. And I put him in my arms. And my little sister had spinal meningitis when she was 4 months old and came home with severe brain damage and seizuring. And I'm holding this little guy in my arms, and I'm thinking, you know what? It's Amy all over again. Different diagnosis, different reason, whatever. But that posturing, everything was the same. But I was a child when we had Amy, and Amy drowned when she was 11, and I was not there, and I was not able to help. I was a child. I couldn't do anything about that. And I looked at Charlie and I thought, you're big now. You had some capability of speaking life into this situation. It does not have to be something where you feel helpless. And so it wasn't a deal breaker. We signed up to take on Charlie, and then it wasn't just that he was significantly brain damaged, but that we ended up finding out later that, he indeed was terminal. And so went through all the grieving of, wow, he's terminal. But that little booger, he ended up getting adopted December of 2015.
Wow.
We didn't think he was going to live long enough to do that. And he's still kicking now. He's 2 years and 9 months old, and he wasn't supposed to live past his second birthday, and wow. He didn't get the memo. So he's still okay. But the thing is like yesterday afternoon, he does this, and we do this lather, rinse, repeat cycle, in the fact that his airway or something, there is no diagnosis and there's nothing we can fix, but he just goes down, and he's on a ventilator, and that was all instituted before we had any say so. And I'm not going to take that off and then watch him struggle and die. I'm not trying to prolong his life, and I am not going to hasten his death. I just get up each day, right, and I take care of this buddy and make sure his skin is in good shape, and that he's held, and that he's loved, and that he hears all the time, Charlie, man, you know what? We love you. You are amazing. We're so glad you're here. And everybody walks by and smooches him on his cheeks, or, gets up and dances with him, and we disconnect his equipment because he can be off long enough to be able to be held and danced around, or watch a movie or that kind of thing. But he had a very difficult afternoon yesterday and was seizing and turning blue, and I look at him and I think, okay, you know what? Are we done? Are we done, buddy? Are we done? And I just don't know from day to day whether or not we're going to be done, or whether or not this is just going to be a glitch and then we're going to go on again. And yesterday was not the end. Kind of gave me a run for my money all afternoon, and then settled down and just went back to his normal. He's very medically fragile, and yet he's a tough cookie, and quite the fighter. And so we're rolling with it. So we have Charlie right now, 2 years, 9 months old, and almost 3. And we also have another child that we're getting ready to bring home. He's 13, and I thought I was a safe haven for babies. And then we found out that there's this 13-year-old who is also terminal. Vanishing white matter, and he looks like a big Charlie. He hasn't gotten out of bed and spoken since last August, and he has lived at the hospital since then. And it's like, okay, you know what, that's done. He needs to come home. He does not have to live at that hospital, and he's got a wheelchair, and we're going to get him outside and let him soak up some sun, and he will have a home. And again, I cannot change the fact that these children are going to die.
Yeah.
What I have some say-so over is whether or not they live in the meantime and day to day. And it is not Disney World crazy amazing. It is, you know what? You get a very timely diaper change. Your skin is lotioned and taken care of. And you got people smooching on your cheeks, and you've got music, and you're fed, and your needs are taken care of. So no fireworks. It's just day to day. I will do the next thing to make sure that you are well taken care of and that you are not suffering any more than you absolutely have to.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that's more than they absolutely would have received without you in their lives. So it's this recurring theme that you and your family, because what you do, your whole family does. It's not
It's not just me.
Right. It's so I mean the fact that 10 people
Yes.
10 people got together and decided, we as a family, this is what we're going to do as a family. We're going to put other children ahead of, our family's routines.
Right.
I'm sorry, what?
And so I have a daughter that lives at home right now who's 21 that just graduated from nursing school, and she's a registered nurse, passed her boards. And, she helps take care of Charlie and will help. And then I have a son and a daughter-in-law who want to be able to be personal care workers with T-Bear, who's supposed to be coming home. And my son is strong enough to be able to pick him up and help take care of him. And I'm flabbergasted sometimes. And so grateful that there's not just this sense of entitlement that, you know what, you're my mom and I'm not sharing you with anyone else and you need to do this and you need to do that, but that they see the value of leave them in the hospital and then they'll die there because I want you to do this with me or that with me. And I do, I take my kids out and, we do coffee and stuff. We don't really vacation because how do you do that?
Right.
But what we do look at is, okay, how can we make living here great instead of living here is heck and we have to go someplace else in order to be able to have a good time. So I am not Elastigirl as much as I would love to be able to be Elastigirl. I'm not, but I see the value in, day to day that needs are taken care of and that my daughters can come up and plop on my bed and, and this and that and the other thing, and that my sons can, we can go outside and throw the ball around or sit and do. But it's mostly around the house. And I think that my kids have said, you know what, the steadiness of knowing where you are and that I can probably find you in the kitchen and I can come in and have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and that you're going to be able to roll with me is invaluable. So, if I'm going to be here 24/7, there's just space to invite these other ones into that and fully embrace them, not just have them come visit because the shininess wears off pretty quickly. I had bought some buckets with a dragon on it. And one of the nurses that was there in the care conference before I brought Charlie home just looked at me and just said, the newness of those buckets is going to last about 10 minutes and then life is going to hit the fan and there's going to have to be a whole lot of, we signed up for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse, for sicker, for whatever. And you're going to have some staying power with that. And I said, okay, that's fine. And it's not that we can't have fun and have a, decorative bucket to hold his IV bags, right. But the day in and day out, you know what, there's just that steadiness. We said we'll stay, and we are people who stay. And I have a dumb bird over here that I do not like at all, but my kids have said, Mom, we brought him home, and we said that we would stay. He's not going anywhere.
Aww.
Like, does this apply to a bird?
Nice.
Because it's not a real pet fan, but they said, yes, it totally applies to the bird, too.
Nope, commitment is key.
We are people who stay, even when it's hard.
Nice. So you started also working with families who were going through this. Is that what
yes,
I wasn't quite...
Yes. Yeah, bereavement specialist. So I was an OB nurse, and then tacked onto that, I became a bereavement specialist that dealt and then developed a role at our hospital that I called the program HALO, Hope After Loss Organization, and would come alongside those families as a hospice nurse during a time when their baby died. I wanted that loss of that life and of that dream and of those hopes validated. And I didn't care how far along they were or what, because quite honestly, somebody who is 8 weeks along and loses that pregnancy has a little bit different grief than someone who is 38 weeks and has a stillbirth.
Right.
Because typically at the 8-week mark, you have nothing tangible to hold.
Right.
And at the 38-week mark, you have, it's grievous, but there can be different reasons why you're grieving that same loss. So to say to someone who's 38 weeks that theirs is more valid than one at 8 weeks, no,
right.
It's just slightly different.
Right.
A family member has been lost, and you have the suddenness of knowing that it's taken immediately, and you don't have any idea that it's coming, and then you have babies that are sick in the womb, and then they have weeks to get adjusted to, I'm going to have this loss, and then there can be a sense. And it was huge for me to encourage them to embrace the time that they had. If they found out that the 18-20 week mark that baby had a fatal fetal anomaly, that they didn't have much time left, it's like, then go to that baseball game and go to that symphony and take that child wherever it is that you think that, you would want them to go while that baby is still in the womb. Go and have those experiences and make the most of each day that you have while that heartbeat is still ticking, instead of being so consumed with grief over that next couple of months or 3 months that you made no good memories at all. And, so there is so much that is sad, and I have wept over, this 13-year-old was up and running as of last summer and then spent 4 days with, some really terrible seizures and has not spoken or gotten out of bed since then. And there's so much sadness over that. But if I leave it there, I just end up with this sense of despair, and I can't live there. So it's like, okay, what can you change, and what do you have no power to change at all? I cannot change the fact that that child's going to die. But what I can change is whether or not those physical needs are met, and as much as possible, that child is not going to be failure to thrive because they don't have any nurturing, right. But that in spite of their broken body's condition, they can still thrive because the difference that being held and being touched and being loved makes is actually tangible and not just intangible. And it wouldn't even matter. I was told that this child was vegetative and had no meaningful communication with his world. And I always take that with a grain of salt. It's like, thank you so much. I appreciate your medical opinion. And now I'm going to take this child home and treat them like the human being that they are. And, we'll just go from there. And Emilin, one of the things that she would do is she would get very uncomfortable and, her face would grimace. But Mark would take her and he would put her head, even though it was full of fluid and not a brain, he would tuck her up under his chin and he would sing. And the vibration of his voice as she laid on his chest would calm that baby down.
Wow.
So you can tell me vegetative all day long. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. Even if she had been comatose, because she's made in the image of God, she still would have warranted being cared for. So that's what we did. And it was just, ice cream sundae to be able to have a child that responded. And I walked into T-Bear after being told he's vegetative, no meaningful communication, and he was getting his nails clipped, and he was going like this, it's like, well, he doesn't like getting his nails clipped. And I was stroking his arm, and he was going, and it was like he was purring, and I thought, dude, I am here.
Wow.
Of you. I don't care whether they consider this meaningful or not. It means something to me. So, I take all that medical stuff and I appreciate it. I am a nurse. I get that. I want the full medical picture. But then I take the intangible difference that being loved and being nurtured makes, and I slather it all over that medical diagnosis and make it palatable.
Wow. So what would you, do you have, do you have other people who are considering just becoming foster parents out of, generally come to you and
Yep.
say,
All the
how do I
time.
do this? Why should I do this?
Yeah. Yeah. And I do have a website, and it is currently in process of being totally overhauled because I am a master at laundry and making supper. Tacky stuff like that is not my gifting. So somebody is overhauling it. But I do have the website, www.safehaven4babies.org. And on there, it says, I want to do this. Okay, great. If they want to do it, then www.adoptuskids.org. Call that foster care agency and say, you know what, I would like to do kiddos that are terminal, or look, I'll take the ones without problems, but they don't have a family.
Right.
You can be anywhere along the spectrum. And the foster care system is full of broken people, and it is broken. So be the change you want to be instead of whining or, writing it off and saying it's a mess. Well, then be a part of it and help redeem that mess. You're not helpless to affect some change. And for everybody, honestly, I think they had this thing out there that 100,000 kids in foster care. Well, you know what? That's like there's 600,000 churches. If even a fraction of them stepped up and one family from every church took one kiddo, we could wipe out the foster care population. So sometimes you can get so overwhelmed with the enormity of it that you get paralyzed. And my philosophy is I cannot make the difference for the entire world, but I will attempt to make the difference for that next child in front of me. And our goal here is, my husband's 62. He's just turned 62, and I'm 51. So, we're old farts. And and I don't know whether you can say fart on your shoulder.
Yes,
but
you can.
it is something that we can't adopt overseas. I had always wanted to do that. I would be pregnant and I'd be watching these infomercials on kids in orphanages in Russia, and I would be crying. It's like, oh God, I'd be so willing to take them here and do this. And $30,000-$40,000 was never there to be able to do an overseas adoption, and it is there for some people. It just hasn't been for us, and then we've gotten too old to even be able to do it. But what we found is that we're not too old to do foster care here, and that Children's Hospital in Milwaukee knows that there's no child that needs to be sitting in their hospital that is considered just too medically fragile or that terminal status that causes most people to walk away, that they are not without options. And so in our neck of the woods, we are just doing the next thing. And I had somebody who told me, okay, so I love my job as a bereavement specialist, and it was fantastic, and I was good at it. And then when that was lost, it was pathetic how I just felt like I lost myself. No job should define me. No child should define me. The relationship, I need to be solidly grounded in the fact that I am loved by God, and then everything else gravy on top of it. And then that's the best way to work. So the loss of the job was really a gift. It's like, you're way too wrapped up in your identity here with this job. So hang that. So when that disappeared, I didn't disappear, but I still had to figure out where I was after that. But I had a woman that told me, she said, you know what, you were just so gifted in doing what it was that you were doing with Halo. I just can't see you staying home with one baby. And I told her, I said, I want you to know that I'm willing to do that. That if that is where God has me, that one baby, that I am going to make the difference between them dying with no life and living until they die. I'm good with it. I may have impacted hundreds of people with my job as a bereavement specialist, but I'm okay with the one. And I will tell you that my being okay with the one has ended up where 90 million people, just because of People magazine, have read about Charlie and myself. So sometimes, you know what, just doing that next thing, as simple as it is, and not saying, oh, I'm only going to do it if I'm going to be great. You know what? I don't need all of that stuff. If nobody else calls and wants to talk to me, and if nobody else calls and wants to interview, I can still take care of Charlie.
Right.
I mean, I don't disappear because I don't have all that media attention. If it's there, fantastic. But my life isn't defined by it. And I think I had to get to a point where I didn't need it at all, that it was just extra.
There.
And that I'm not lost if y'all go away.
Well,
I do.
We won't go away. I would, I've followed your page and I'll keep following. I would love to continue blasting stuff out there for you. You know, if you need things. I saw you just had a van donated, correct? Was that right?
Yes. And we're trying to figure out what exactly we're going to do with that, because it's a minivan. And we have 2 kids in reclining wheelchairs. So it may be that we're going to get this minivan and then we're going to have to turn around and sell it and then get one that works.
Well, you know, even that's a path to getting something that you need.
Right.
Do you have a book in the works?
I do. Yes, I'm actually supposed to be writing a book.
All right. I'll leave you alone. I know how that goes too.
I should be laughing, but I saw the brochure that they made up, you know, for this book, and I was like, I would read that. That is so awesome. And I was like, yeah, you probably ought to write it. So
Okay. All right. I don't want to be the one who's to blame for you not doing that. But I will say, as you get closer, when you have launch dates and all that stuff, we will absolutely blast that out too, because our hope is that even by every story we share, we can help somebody out there realize that there's something in their own lives that they can do as well. And so the more that the story hits, the more it'll hit somebody else to do. So we're going to continue sharing these stories and resharing. You know, we'll go back to stories that we've done and we'll post updates and new stuff and keep drawing in and help you draw that community. So you're impacting lives, like you said, through People Magazine. We're not quite up to People Magazine status, but we're getting there.
Yeah, but you know what? That's all those individuals that read it and maybe have thought, you know what, that thing that I didn't think I could do, maybe I can. It doesn't have to be easy. It just needs to be possible. And I have told my kids, I have a daughter who's over in Thailand working in an orphanage over there, kids that have been rescued from the sex trafficking industry, and trying to get her there. And the visa, you know, form that we had to fill in 8 times because I have to do it by hand and you cannot have any marks scratched out. We had to start over and over. Wow. I told her, I said, it's not impossible. It's just hard. But, you know, so we need to keep doing this until it's impossible. I'm not trying to beat down doors that should not be open, but difficult does not mean not doable.
Right.
Yeah. I just, you know, I want that with my kids, that they don't just lay down and quit because it's hard. Because, you know, you tried to get on today.
I know.
You know, and if I was one of those people that's like, oh, it didn't just snap and happen, I would be lost because I cannot do what I do and be wiped out at the first sign of difficulty. You gotta be so much more solidly based than that, or you won't last. And we want to be people that say yes and we stay.
That's great. I want to touch quickly. You said you have a daughter in Thailand working with children, and I think I saw you have another daughter. Did you working with children as well? I mean, is this something? Are your children in general following your path in some venue?
Yeah. You know what? They're just kind of working it out, and like my son is a youth pastor, and you know, just kind of he works with our juvenile foster system here, and is like a big brother to kids. He's 24, and you know, and then Johanna's a missionary over there in Thailand, and has a home that has 20 kids that are safe.
Wow!
It's a safe haven there in Thailand, and then, you know, like I said, Charity just graduated from nursing school and is just plowing right back into the kiddos that we have here and wants to work at, she works with Youth Campus Life actually here in Oregon. Will be there like their camp nurse and their on-campus nurse for the summer, and then wants to work with children after that. So they don't have to do exactly what we're doing, but it is something that's like, okay, you know what? It's a natural extension.
Yes.
To go out, and then they affect their world from there. So this is not a negative thing. I will not say it's always easy. We had triplets last year. which was insane. And they were medically needed when they came, and that was fixed right away. And then they're fine. So they were not terminal, but we had them from the time that they were 7 months old until they were 18 months old.
Wow.
So talk about wild. So they went, started crawling, and then walking, and then running, and it's like, look, I'm old. I was with the grandkids, and you give them pop and you send them home. What is up with this? And they were here 24/7, and it was exhausting, but it was so good. But like my 15-year-old, I told her one night, I need a mental health break. You are going to watch these kids. And she looked at me and she says, yeah, well, it's just not that much fun anymore. I said, welcome to life, baby. Yeah. So, I told her, I said, I appreciate the fact that it's just not that much fun anymore. But guess what? They're still here.
Yeah.
They still need to be taken care of. So you get to do this. You don't even have to be happy about it. I'm not going to push that point, but you get to do this. And she's like, what? And I said, no, you know what? We are people who just do this. And it's not always fun. And you better get used to that. So, life lessons for the kids, that we don't just do this because it's fun and it's exciting, because that shiny wears off really fast, and it may come back in and not, but you don't just say yes because you want it to stay exciting and shiny. You say yes, and then you take the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it's been good life lessons for my kids, and not easy, and they do whine and they do roll their eyes. It's like, I'm just a slave. And it's like, yes, you are.
Awesome. Well, go write your book.
To go and probably get supper ready for this gang here.
Thank you for battling through this. Thank you for battling through the Skype issues.